Back when Sony first announced the specifications of the PS5, I noted that the PS5's best-in-class SSD was an advantage that may not clearly be evident to the naked eye, given that the developers would have to design on multiple platforms. For third-party games, there could be a slight speed advantage on the PS5, given the SSD's read and write speeds, but developers would have to try and find a reasonable baseline level that the game would be comparable across all platforms. But in the few months since, my sentiment on the SSD has shifted. It's not that it's suddenly faster than what I expected, it's that it's revealed a flaw in the PC platform. Sony has found a weakness and is exploiting it, and the SSD is a physical manifestation of Sony pushing this advantage. The PC's real weakness is that it doesn't have any real leadership. You see, Sony were in a bit of a conundrum. With the PS3, the time to triangle, which is basically the time for someone to learn to program with the new hardware, was increasing. It would take 6 to 12 months for someone to learn the PS3. Rather than continue down this path of special custom processors that would continue to take a long time for developers to learn, Sony went for the more familiar x86 architecture that would bring this time to triangle down for the PS4. This came at the cost of specialized hardware and features, which meant for people who had money to spend on high-end PC hardware, they could overtake the performance of the PS4 very easily. The PS4 was so easily beaten that they released the mid-generation console, the PS4 Pro, because the PCs were improving out of sight. PCs started to become very popular. Meanwhile, questions were raised about whether Sony should move to regular hardware releases so that the hardware wouldn't be out of date so often. And for the PS5, if Sony were to release a box mimicking a PC like they did with the PS4, it would be very likely this would happen all over again this generation. But Sony decided it had something that the PC didn't have: leadership, brand power, the ability to create hardware generations, the ability to make clean cuts to dead technologies and adoption of new ones. We saw that with DVDs versus VHS, or Blu-rays with DVDs. It was the ability of Sony to enforce technological advancement and not carry over old technologies that gave it an advantage over other competition. With the SSD, what we are seeing is a custom and specialized piece of hardware that is exclusive to the PS5 and will be for the rest of the generation. The PS5 SSD contains special dedicated hardware that takes these tasks away from the CPU and runs them on its own flash controller. The advantage is that it can do it many times faster than a CPU at a cheaper cost, and also relieves the CPU to run other tasks. For a dedicated look at this SSD, I highly recommend watching the PS5 deep dive from Mark Cerny that goes over the thought process into creating the SSD. What Sony has done is create custom hardware that puts Sony out into territory all on its own. A large part is speed, but more so its uniqueness and a space that Microsoft or PC can't really get to. Even if the PC somehow miraculously adopts and releases this technology, say within a year, the adoption rate from PC gamers will take time. This has and always will be PC's downfall, a mass lumbering market of people with a wide range of hardware. Developers are always considering a market size in respect to the game they're creating. Ideally, they're always trying to allow for as big a market as possible, which can sometimes mean supporting the lowest denominator hardware and making sacrifices to the actual game. PC gamers cannot simply assume that if fast SSDs come out with custom flash controllers that mirror PS5s, that games will be developed for it and that it will happen within a year or two. It could take an entire generation for PC gamers to adopt these fast SSDs, especially with many gamers who may have bought a PC recently and be reluctant to buy again. And that leads me to think that the PC has no leadership. It's a free-flowing, evolving ideological landscape that automatically shifts towards what is best, but takes time to do so. Who is going to stand up and build the hardware to compete with Sony, Intel, SSD manufacturers like SanDisk or Samsung? Even if a player in the market like Samsung takes the initiative, it doesn't stop another company like SanDisk to bring out a new technology, dividing the PC landscape further. What the PC needs is time to sort out these differences and time for consumers to adopt the new technologies. The PC slowly built the best hardware architecture, used dedicated GPUs to drastically improve 3D games, and create an ecosystem where consumers had complete control over the hardware they put in their machine. That's what makes PCs what they are today. But what the PC doesn't have is an ability to react to the competition and enforce change across the board. In a sense, PCs versus consoles is an ideological debate, and it's a debate where Sony has impressively swung back in its favor with the SSD. That's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed my take on the PS5 versus PC debate. And if you like this video, help me out by clicking on the like button and make sure to subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you in the next one.